I think one of the most incredible things, I have to talk to you about this, one of the most incredible things that humans have ever accomplished is LIGO.
Hmm.
We have to talk about gravitational waves. And the very fact that we're able to detect gravitational waves from the early universe is effing wild to
It's
me.
crazy. Yeah.
Can you explain what gravitational waves are? And we should mention you wrote a book about the humans,
Yeah.
about the whole journey of detecting gravitational waves, and LIGO, Black Hole Blues is the book. But can you talk about gravitational
Yeah.
waves and how the hell we're able to actually do it?
Let's just start with the idea of gravitational waves. I have to move around a lot of mass to make anything interesting happening in gravity. I mean, if you think about it, gravity is incredibly weak. I mean, right now, the whole Earth is pulling on me, and I can still get out of this chair and walk around. Like, that's insane. The
Yeah.
whole Earth. Gravity's weak, right? So to get something going on in gravity, I need like big objects and things like black holes. So the idea is if black holes curve space and time around them in the way that we've been describing, things fall along the curves in space. If the black holes move around, the curves have to follow them, right? But they can't travel faster than the speed of light either. So what happens is as black holes, let's say, move around. Maybe I've got two black holes in orbit around each other. That can happen. It takes a while. A wave is created in the actual shape of space. And that wave follows the black holes as the black holes are undulating. Eventually, those two black holes will merge. And as we were talking about, it doesn't take an infinite time, even though there's time dilation, because they're both so big. They're really deforming space-time a lot. I don't have a little tiny marble falling across an event horizon. I have two event horizons. And in the simulations, you can see it bobble, and they merge together, and they make one bigger black hole, and then it radiates in the gravitational waves. It radiates away all those imperfections, and it settles down to one quiescent, perfectly silent black hole that's spinning. Beautiful stuff. And it emits E equals mc squared energy. So the mass of the final black hole will be less than the sum of the two starter black holes. And that energy is radiated away in this ringing of spacetime. It's really important to emphasize that it's not light. None of this has to do literally with light that we can detect with normal things that detect light. X-rays form of light, gamma rays are a form of light, infrared, optical, all this whole electromagnetic spectrum. None of it is emitted as light. It's completely dark. It's only emitted in the rippling of the shape of space. A lot of times it's likened closer to sound. Technically, we've kind of argued, I haven't done an anatomical calculation, but if you're near enough to two colliding black holes, they actually ring space-time in the human auditory range. The frequency is actually in the human auditory range, that the shape of space could squeeze and stretch your eardrum, even in vacuum. And you could literally hear these waves ringing. So the idea is that they're closer to something that you would want to map as a sound than as something as a picture.
Sorry, so what do you think it would feel like to ride the gravitational wave? So like to exist, because
Yeah.
you mentioned
I mean, you
eardrums.
would literally bob around, like your orbit would change, right? If you were orbiting these black holes, two black holes, you'd be on a kind of complicated orbit,
Yeah.
but your orbit would get tossed about.
But how would the experience be? Because you're inside space-time.
Yes, I see. So the black hole is experienced within spacetime as a squeezing and stretching. So you would feel it as a sort of squeezing and stretching, and you would also find your location change. Where you would fall would be redirected. So it's literally like a squeezing and stretching.
Yeah.
That's the way to think about it. And it's very detailed, the sort of nature of this. And but for many years, people thought, well, these gravitational waves kind of have to exist for these intuitive reasons I've described. As space-time's curved, I move the curve, the wave has to propagate through that curved space-time. But people didn't know if they really carried energy. The arguments went on and back and forth, and papers written in decades, right? But I like this sound more than an analogy, because I liken the black holes as like mallets on the drum. The drum is space-time.
Yeah.
As they move, they bang on the drum of space-time, and it rings. remarkably, those gravitational waves, things don't interfere with them very much. So they can travel for 2 billion years, light years, in distance, 2 billion years in time, and get to us kind of as they were when they were emitted. Quieter, more diffuse. Maybe they've stretched out a little bit from the expansion of the universe, but they're pretty preserved. And so the idea of LIGO, this instrument, is to build a gigantic musical instrument. It's kind of like building an electric guitar, where the electric guitar is recording the shape of the string and it plays it back to you through an amplifier. LIGO is trying to record the shape of the ringing drum, and they literally listen to it in the control room. Just sort of hums and wobbles. And they're like trying to play this recording drum back to you.
Mhm.
As opposed to taking a snapshot, it's like in time.
Yeah, but to construct this guitar,
Yes, this
you have to
gigantic
it
instrument.
has to be very large and extremely precise.
It's unbelievable. I can't believe they succeeded. I can't believe they succeeded.
Yeah.
It was so insane. It was such a crazy thing to even attempt. It took them 50 years. Really, that's people who started in their 30s and 40s who were in their 80s when it succeeded. I mean, imagine that tenacity, the unbelievable commitment. But the sensitivity that we're talking about is we have this musical instrument, the size 4 kilometers, spanning 4 kilometers in a kind of L shape with these tunnels where there's the largest holes in the Earth's atmosphere because they pulled a vacuum in these tunnels to build this instrument. And they're measuring, they're trying to record the wobbling of spacetime, right, as it passes, this sort of undulation that amounts to less than 1/10,000th the variation in a proton over the 4 kilometers. It's an insane, insane achievement.
I love great engineering.
I
I
don't
love
know how
great
they did it.
engineering.
I swear, I followed them around I just for fun. I'm very theoretical. I don't build things. I'm always super impressed that people can translate something on the page and it looks like wires, and I don't know I'm always surprised at what it looks like, but I walked the tunnels with Ray Weiss, who won the Nobel Prize, along with Kip Thorne and Barry Barish, one of the project managers, and I walked the tunnels with Ray. It was a delight. I mean, Ray's one of the most delightful people. Kip is one of the most wonderful people I've ever known. And Ray said to me, the reason why it was called Black Hole Blues is because about a month before they succeeded, he said to me, if we don't detect black holes, this whole thing's a failure. And we've led this country, down this wrong path. And he really felt like this tremendous responsibility for this project to succeed. And it weighed on him, It was just quite tremendous what the integrity, right? The scientific integrity. And the first instruments he built, he was building outside of MIT and on a tabletop. And his colleagues said, "You're not going to get tenure. You're never going to succeed." And they just kept going.
People like that, so huge teams, huge collaborations are just is how the world moves forward, because
It's an example.
it's there's a building cynicism about bureaucracies when a large number of people, especially connected to government, can be productive. Bureaucracies slow everything down. So it's nice to see an incredibly unlikely, exceptionally difficult engineering project like this succeed.
Oh, yeah.
So I understand why there's this weight on his shoulders, and I'm grateful that there's great leaders that push it forward like that.
Yeah, it really is. You see so many moments when they could have stumbled.
Yeah.
And they built a first generation machine just after 2000, and it wasn't a surprise to them, but it detected nothing. Crickets. Crickets. And they just, they have the wherewithal to keep going. Second generation, they're about to turn the machine on, quote unquote. It's a little bit of a simplification, but do their first science run. And they decide to postpone because they feel they're not ready yet. September 14th in 2015. And the experimentalists are out there. They're in the middle of the night. They're working all night long, and they're banging on the thing, literally driving trucks, slamming the brakes onto see the noise that it creates. And so they're really messing with the machine, really interfering with it just to kind of calibrate how much noise can this thing tolerate. And I guess The story is they get tired. There's an instrument in Louisiana and there's one in Washington State, and they go home. Put their tools down, they go home. It's they leave the instrument locked though, mercifully. And it's something like within the span of an hour of them driving back to their humble abodes that they have in these remote regions where they built these instruments, this gravitational wave washes over. I think it hits Louisiana first. It travels across the U.S., brings the instrument in Washington State. It began, over 1.5 billion years ago, before multicellular organisms had emerged on the Earth.
Yeah.
Just imagine this from like a distant view, this collision course,
Yeah.
right? And it's the centenary. It's the year Einstein published general relativity.
That's
So it was this, 100 years. I mean, just think about where that signal was when Einstein in 1915 wrote down the general theory of relativity. It was on its way here. It was almost here.
What do you think is cooler, Einstein's general relativity or LIGO?
Well, I can't disparage my friends, but of course, relativity is just so all-encompassing.
No, but so hold on a second. All-encompassing, super powerful leap of a theory.
Yeah.
And
they built it. I don't know, man.
The greatest engineering in the
Yeah.
Because I don't know, because humans getting together and building the thing, that's really ultimately what impacts the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just, as I said, my admiration for Ray and Kip and the entire team is enormous. And just imagining Ray had been out there on site. He had just left to go back home. Wakes up in the middle of the night and sees it. Can you imagine? And there's a signal. There's something in the log. He's like, "What the hell is that?"